All right, cool. With us are Zach and Josh from Trust Nomad. Guys, thank you very much for joining me for the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We're excited.
Good deal. So people that don't know your business, they don't know who you guys are. Let's kind of start with a 30,000 foot look at your agency here, and then we'll kind of dive in and peel back the layers of the onion throughout the conversation here.
Sure. So Nomad is a full service creative agency built and designed specifically for cannabis and plant medicine companies. We're about 2 years old. Before that, Josh and I were independent contractors working for cannabis businesses and brands. I'm based out of Boulder, Colorado, and Josh is in San Diego. So we, being in California and Colorado, we've had, a good perspective and view of the emerging cannabis industry from the beginning. I moved to Colorado right when legalization was getting kicked off here, and sort of been here at the beginning. And he and I have worked, in almost every legal state now. We've done projects for brands and packaging, and our designs are on the shelf across the country. We've even done some retail stores. We did our first interior design last year, which was fun. But yeah, no, we're just a full service agency. We're a little bit smaller and tighter, kind of family vibes from us. But we've alongside the industry grown really well and smartly. Obviously, it's been a challenging year for everybody. Yeah. But in the grand scheme, cannabis is still in its earliest stages, and we're sort of positioning ourselves for the long haul. We're not here to get rich tomorrow, and we're really a creative and design focused agency. We're in this for the art and for the fun and for really designing beautiful brands that astonish is a word we like to use.
I love that. That's awesome.
And really just make people think and think about cannabis in a new way and what it can be, and obviously bringing it a little bit more into the traditional CPG world, and helping be ambassadors to the plant.
Gotcha. That's my next kind of question is like, all right, so what's the background of you guys from CPG? Who is the design element? Who's more the branding person? Kind of what are your roles within the company here?
Josh, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so Zach does most of the business, runs all the business side and the client outreach, and I run the design team. We both Zach comes from finance and I come from a variety of corporate gigs and industries. Started out in the medical industry, did commercial real estate, education, e-commerce down the line. And then a couple of years after going freelance, I was about ready to give up graphic design altogether to get into cannabis. I had friends starting dispensaries, and I was super passionate about plant medicine, and was about to go get kind of a entry-level job as a bud tender at a dispensary. And in the week in between that, I got my first cannabis logo project, and then a second one, and then I linked it to Zach, and the passion for design and marketing really came back. And between Zach's business prowess and the creative skills, we've built up a really good team. And the premise behind Nomad is that we have designers and team members kind of all over the world. We have 2 designers in 2 different parts of Mexico, photographer in New York, and we're really building up a team that has no borders. So it's exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. So it sounds like, obviously Nomad is part of the ethos of the company, kind of like a digital first nomadic type of team. I think everybody's starting to go this way now, or you're seeing a lot of businesses go this way. Let's talk about building and managing a remote team, and specifically a creative team, right? Everybody has their own different way of articulating. I think me being in the marketing industry and in this side, it's very hard sometimes for brands to articulate what they want their brand to be or how to communicate these things, whether that's even just through the English language, but having potential other language barriers and other kind of customary things. Tell me a little bit about building a team that sees the vision that you guys see and how you go about finding talent. Because sometimes, at least we hear on our end in the CPA firm, kind of realm, it's hard to find talent. When you go into cannabis, there's a little bit of a stigma attached to you. You can't really go back to the big 4 accounting firms, and you kind of cut off certain options. So let's kind of talk about building this team, this remote first team, and any kind of challenges that go with that.
Yeah, as Josh alluded to, we were nomadic before the world shut down, and we've all learned how to use Zoom and Slack. Obviously, the word nomad means not only physically nomadic, but I think from an art, design, inspiration, style, creativity standpoint, we have a distinct aesthetic that we bring, and people hire us, and clients, know us. We're known for a certain style. Obviously, we work in many modalities and in many aesthetics, and we have, a designer who comes from the sort of wine and high-end cosmetics world. Josh has a lot of corporate now cannabis background. We're bringing people in from different industries. And I think, to answer your question, how do you maintain a creative vibe while you're separated? And I think that we've actually learned to use it to our advantage. Listen, we would all love to get together 3 days a week and pour over packaging concepts and designs and have a centralized office. And we do have an office here in Boulder, but I think that what underlies that ability is frankly trust. We don't work with just anybody. When we bring people on, and we're now a team of 6, we take our time to groom and to learn and to envelop people. We're all friends. We are all pretty close friends. Our work doesn't stop. Our communications don't stop Friday afternoon. We're involved in each other's lives. We know what's going on. We're sensitive to it. Over time, obviously, it takes time. You don't get to know everyone overnight. But for us, having a real family unit, it's special. And I actually look forward to sharing what I did over the weekend with the Nomad team and feel like it's a part of it. And I think that bleeds over into our work. I think when you trust your coworkers, you trust them to give you good feedback. You trust them to support your work when you need it. You trust them to step into a meeting when you're busy or something comes up. That they've got your back. And so I think it extends all the way to the business side, the communication side. Listen, we were good at using Slack and Zoom before COVID hit. So maybe we had a little bit of an advantage. At the same time, part of that nomadic, thing is, I'll be honest with you, the cannabis industry does not have to date the budgets and timelines and understandings that are required to build the next multi-million-dollar brands in the business or billion-dollar brands. Cannabis is a giant industry that's going to explode in the next 5-10 years, not only nationally but internationally. We're started to just work with our first Canadian and New Zealand clients in the past 6 weeks. So certainly we have some interest in the EU as well. So we're gearing up for a big thing. But the truth is, being nomadic, frankly, not having to have a $20,000 a month office in Boulder, or San Diego, helps us keep our costs down.
Oh yeah.
Josh and I aren't making all the money in the world. We're doing good work, and we make nice livings. But we're certainly we operate on tighter margins because that's where the industry is. And I think meeting the industry where it is on its own terms, as opposed to where we want it to be. We know we take on a brand development project that should be $100K, and we're figuring out ways to do it for $30,000 or $40,000. Sometimes we can't, and we have to say so. And sometimes there's ways of doing it. So I think it's a big piece of our philosophy is finding great people, good ideas, good partners, and growing with them. If we have to take smaller projects and smaller budgets, but we know it's a company that we believe in, that's got a great ethos or a great product, or we work well with them, they like our design style, we'll wait 6 months or a year until we can, soak them on the billing later. But that's frankly, I think a big reason for our success is figuring out where your clients are, working where they are with what they've got. And that's not just a financial, that is also personal. There's a lot of people in cannabis who aren't familiar with the traditional branding process, who don't have CPG experience and don't understand, they think a logo is a week. When we look at brand identities, we know it's a month and 2 month long process to build a brand that's going to exist for years. Ideally, you don't do that in 5 days. You don't do that overnight. So I think that's sort of, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. It does. And it's good that you are meeting your clients where they're at, as service providers and ancillary service providers, you come from backgrounds where, these budgets should take this time, this big and this long. You have to almost educate as much as you are helping these people with the actual service you're rendering for them. So it's great that you guys have done that and you find that valuable to your clients. So let's kind of talk about some of the clients, some of the projects I saw. You've got Marigold, Woodstock, Spark, Elevate, many, many others. What are some of the projects over the past few years that you're the most proud of, or you've seen in the most places, where, hey, it's like, wow, that's us. Have you walked into stores and seen your stuff? Tell us about some of these exciting projects you guys have worked on.
Josh, you want to start? And I'll definitely have a couple of thoughts.
There's been so many, and I think that part of what we love about what we do are the challenging aspects and all of the challenges that come with meeting, like you said, that client's needs. And, you know, we get very proud of a corporate, more corporate pet CBD product as we do about a big Marigold rebrand. And, you know, I think Woodstock is one that obviously is at the top of the list. And to Zac's credit, you know, in addition to just doing the business and the client outreach is really the marketing and the strategy and the building that and setting forth the vision. And Zac, you know, along with our team, but Zac really led the way of years of building with Woodstock behind the scenes, literally years of back and forth, and, you know, even some legal issues, and Zac navigating that with the client and working with a multitude of people and bringing, you know, Zac almost single-handedly, obviously a team of people supporting him, but bringing that product, not just the branding and the creative, which is what we do every day, but for the first time really bringing a product to market with all of the SKU numbers and all of the sales projections and everything that goes along with bringing a company from an idea to a reality. So obviously Woodstock is at the top of that list, and Zac deserves a lot of kudos for that one for sure.
And I take all the kudos. I'm not the modest one, Jim. You know, something that I really appreciate about cannabis, and I know we all do, is that almost every single client, we learn something new and we're challenged in a different way. You know, cannabis is very much an improvisational industry. We're all making it up as we go along. You know, Josh and I collectively have been in this space for over 10 years now. We've been connected to the plant for 20 years each. And so, you know, whether last year we basically served as the in-house agency for Ascend Wellness. They're a multi-state operator, what's called an MSO. You know, Illinois, Michigan, Massachusetts, where else? Ohio, and they were opening up Jersey. And working for an MSO presented so many really interesting challenges. First of all, we were developing multiple brands across multiple states.
Okay, got
so we had a flower brand in Michigan, a vape brand in Massachusetts, a retail store brand in Illinois, and we were developing, you know, signage and logos for their New Jersey entity, billboards in this state. So I think what that showed us is, you know, how do you work for an MSO that's got, you know, getting inside the curtain, so to speak, and you know, and seeing what an MSO is dealing with, right? They're operating multiple states, 10 million different compliance challenges, production, cultivation, processing. You can do this product in Michigan, but you can't do that product in Illinois. And as we're building brands that are meant to be either in one state or in all of the states, they had a house brand that they were going to launch in every single state, but every state has different compliance issues. So there was that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, when you've got a single client, it's in one state, they're growing, they had a brand for 10 years, they haven't changed their logo, they haven't updated their packaging, their website's out of date, their social media needs some good photography and a refresh. And I think going into that granular level, on a micro level of like, how do we slowly elevate this brand piece by piece? And by the way, they're not going to have the budgets. So how do we stretch that dollar to give them what they need so that they can increase sales right off the bat, so that they can keep investing in their marketing and their branding? And we've seen that. We've taken clients where they only have $2,500 and we've said, okay, how do we use this money as smartly as possible to increase sales next month? Sometimes it's a new packaging design, you know, we haven't touched, or it's a new sell sheet that they can hand out to bud tenders and buyers. And so I think that idea that each client, big or small, big budgets or tight, that there's something to offer, there's something to learn. And we envision, and we do our best to look towards the future, so that 2, 3, 4 years from now, we've got this accumulated knowledge base. And as Josh mentioned with Woodstock is not only a branding project, we've actually taken the product to market, which means that we found supply chains providers, we found cultivators, we found processors, we found co-packers, and we found distributors and salespeople. This is not what a traditional brand or creative services agency does. You do the brand and then ship it. Well, this client needed more. They needed me to travel to Northern California and go find people who could do this, who could do a white label deal. It's a national brand. So I think that every time we get challenged, once it's done, whether it's highly successful or just a little successful, or maybe it even doesn't work, and an engagement ends. Happens sometimes.
Yeah.
We come back to our home base and we've now picked up another skill, and that is something else that gets offered to the next batch of clients. And we are now able to offer clients. We have, founders and entrepreneurs coming to us. I have an idea for a thing. Our first question is, do you know how you're going to make it? Great. No. Great. We can take that, we can help you get it developed too. And I think adding value on that thing, that is not a traditional brand service, but it's something we have to offer for our clients.
Yeah, and it's like early industry, they don't have any connections. They're like, I just like to start a brand. I know that I need this, this, and this, but I don't know anybody. And as we're talking about in a lot of these podcasts and just things overall, cannabis is a team sport. You need a lot of people to make this, this entity move forward and to get these kind of projects across the finish line. So it's good that you guys are expanding your skill set. And yeah, I mean, being that partner that's, hey, it's a trusted partner that can connect you pretty much with whoever you need, and that Rolodex that you guys have is probably getting really thick and really valuable. But
and it's getting there because we're doing what we believe in and what we're passionate about. So it just feels right every step of the way.
Yeah, and you brought up, I mean, I think it was Zach bringing up like, hey, we're not crushing, making millions of dollars a year personally, but like the thing is, you have to have the passion to show up and do your creative stuff every day and to help these brands, and we'll say that labor of love for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big reason to why we are where we are. If it was only about the money, Zach could probably still be, buying stocks on Wall Street, and I'd still be sitting at a corporate desk. But that's why we, part of that nomadic vibe is wanting to become that antithesis and do our own thing and live our own lives and help people and do the right thing. Yeah.
Good. All right. So let's talk about branding, kind of some tips around branding. So as new cannabis brands, there are a lot of things they can think about, and their mind runs wild. What are kind of some of the first few tips for developing their brand or finding their target audience? What are these first 3 to 8 questions that they should ask themselves to really get, a grip on, hey, is this just good alliteration and it's not really a brand, or is like this really going to be something? What should these groups be thinking about when they're developing their branding in the first few stages there?
I'm going to pass this to Josh, in a second, but what I'll say is that the first question they should ask is, do I really have the money to do this right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, and I hate to be, I love to be controversial about it, but Josh and I just published our first kind of essay blog post. We have a very restrained sense of our own marketing. We don't do a lot of advertising. We don't do a lot of blogging or social media. We have we use Instagram. That's a portfolio. We do some fun things there, but we keep it really minimal. But we did just publish a blog post called "Don't Hire Us," and it's obviously tongue in cheek and meant as a little provocative. But it's basically a list of things, of guidance points and advice to people that are looking to start cannabis brands or refreshing existing ones. And it's basically a checklist, which is like, if you don't have the money, don't do this. Because doing it wrong, you're going to waste your money and you're not going to be successful. Now, obviously, that's within reason, and we don't want people to not follow their dreams. But being realistic about what it costs, not just to design the brand or build a brand or tell a story or find your audience, but to do packaging the right way, to not have to compromise on print, to not find out, months later that you're running out of money and have no money to market your brand. No, great, you got it launched. And you have a beautiful website and nice packaging, but now you have nothing to do. You have no events, you have no merch, you have no wholesale abilities. You can't hire good salespeople, and then you wonder 6 months later why your baby didn't take off.
Yeah.
But to your question about, so we do have a checklist. It's, do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you really have something special to offer? What's the differentiator? We get a lot of people who come in, they think they've got something useful to offer, something new, and we can do the 5 minutes of research and find out that 5 other brands already have it. Yeah. And so, listen, we have a process. We start with what we like to call brand incubation sessions. We used to be on site. Josh and I would fly, or we'd fly clients here and meet in our offices and do a 2-day brainstorm session with whiteboards and videos and inspiration and tear up magazines and do it the old fashioned way. Yeah. But the first question is, what's your mission? What's your mission statement? What are your values? What story? And of course, as you mentioned, who's your audience? Like, is it you? Tell me about who's in your head when you think about, I want to launch an infused pre-roll line. Who's smoking this? When?
You can't sell to everybody.
You can't be everything to everyone, right? We're not all Coca-Cola here. And I think those brands will be there. Brands that do offer, a budget, a female, a senior, a mainstream, a stoner, a connoisseur, Canna Curious, and they'll have a full line. But I think we're at the stage right now where people are coming out with sort of granular brands that have a pretty determined audience. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's things like mission statement, it's things like what's your vision, it's things like your audience, it's things like your values, your lexicon, your culture, I think is a word that gets overused, but it's important. Like what are we doing? Josh, what are your thoughts on sort of
I mean,
brand building?
even if it's a single person with an idea, the culture of that idea is very important. And, you know, to Zach's point, it's not that you have to be rich or have to have $100,000 in 5 years, but you have to have the time and the money. And even if it's just a little bit of money, you have to plan out the fact. So many people think that you can pay $5 for a logo and put the logo on a box and white label it, and now it's something on the shelf, but that's not the way we view things. So that's where we do take a step back and, you know, get people to think about their story. And, you know, Zach kind of runs the brand incubation, the high level stuff, and I focus on the details of what are your looks, what kind of art are hanging in your house, what kind of clothes do you wear, what do you envision the artwork in your business being? Is it a digital business? Is it an online business? Is it chic? So, you know, where Zach focuses on the high level, I focus on the details, and then we funnel it down into the story. And sometimes it's a fabricated story that we have to pull real bits into from the person's life, and that they've created this fiction story, and then we pick these things in their life to make it a reality. And other times we get answers like, oh, my neighbors hate me and the stress on the environment is making my product better, and we run with that. And it's that whole gamut. It's really exciting, but challenging the client to, you know, I think what Zach said earlier about where we find our talent and how we treat our team in the nomadic world, it's family and it's friendship and it's collaboration first. And that extends to our clients. We always tell our clients that when we sign a contract, we're getting married, and a marriage only works when you're communicating. And when you're communicating and you're sending text messages and pictures and inspiration, it all just happens so naturally.
Yeah, and so it probably creates a more authentic brand too. When you're not making up something that just has no base in it's any kind of reality, it's really helping to embody this person's feelings and emotions and everything that comes along with the brand. And as Zach was saying, you know, you start with the basic stuff, your mission statement, you know, your guiding principles, these things that, hey, seem like, you know, fluff from an agency, but it's really important because those are the common threads throughout all the pieces of creative. So when someone sees it, they know that this is ABC brand or this is XYZ brand because it feels that way. It's that kind of emotive thing that comes with branding. You know, it's not just a logo. It means much more to some people.
There's something else to that, Jim. You're exactly right. And you know, this word brand and branding gets tossed around a lot, and it becomes cliche and it becomes devoid of value and, you know, drained of its meaning. But, you know, the brand is everything. You know,
it's your reputation.
Yeah, and it's you know, we think of some of the more successful brands and businesses in the cannabis space. You know, Josh, help me out here, but 710 Labs, Cresco,
Cresco, Wonder Bread,
yeah, Cookies,
Greenhouse.
You know, right, Wana. You know, whether it's corporate or not, or whether it's like Homie, OG, we've been extracting for 15 years and we're just into the terpenes of the terpene. I think what unites them all is like truth. They know who they are. They know who they, and they're, because you know who you are and you're starting to find success, you don't have to question every move.
Exactly.
Like you can trust your team. You know, Josh and I now, we have a team around us that we trust to take the ball and roll it. Like we don't post every Instagram post. We don't do every design. We don't think about every little, you know, aspect of every project. So you know, it just becomes second nature. And that brand, sure, it usually springs from one or two people, but then as you invite more people, as you grow and have to invite more people into it, that's where culture and authenticity come in. And so you look at some of these brands, they know what to do because it's second nature already. They don't have to think about, oh, what is our social media page going to look like today? Or how do we want to come across? They are who they are. And that is honestly, that as valuable as the products and the revenue they're making, those are the aspects and the values that are going to make brands worth tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how much brand is worth at its core. When you get it right, and when you cultivate it, when you grow it, and when you let it be its own thing. So we've done a lot of employee handbooks, and we help some of our clients communicate what we're working with the CMO or the CEO or the product developers. Okay, we're working together for 3 months on a whole new batch of products and designs and social media ideas and advertising and sell sheets and catalogs and photography. But you've got 30 other employees. They weren't in all these meetings.
Yeah, that cascade training is important.
Exactly. So how do we get them something that gets them buy-in, let alone bud tenders, buyers, and the consumer beyond that? There is one thing that gets our goat, kind of going back to our blog about don't hire us. And that is that every single brand comes in. It's a pet peeve of ours, comes in and we say, what are your values? And every single one, honesty, quality, transparency, innovation, what else? Passion.
We love the industry.
Passionate. Everyone's honest. Everyone's authentic. And when we hear that, we don't get upset because we understand that's
it's vanilla. It's very easy to want to say that kind of stuff because you think it's what they want to hear.
Well, it's also we've been working with a lot of smaller farms and a lot of mom and pop shops that have been fortunate enough to get over the hump of recreational and stay afloat and stay in business, and now they're realizing they need to update their brand and kind of and take that bigger leap. So we're finding a lot of success kind of guiding that path and doing a lot of the handholding. And so we're certainly not getting upset. We don't take it personal. We honestly believe that they are honest and truthful and passionate. We just need to find creative ways of sharing that with their consumer base versus saying these same words that mean nothing to the purchasers anymore.
Yeah, because everybody is transparent. You better be like, that's kind of like the bar now that like, hey, don't be like, doing shady shit. You're going to be in deep stuff.
10 years ago, 5 years ago, those words meant something because there was so much hidden in the industry. And now everything is becoming so transparent that you really have to find those creative ways of ownable. We talk a lot about ownable style and ownable aspects of your brand.
Yeah, it's like the moat for the business for sure. So let's kind of do a little bit of gear switching here and talk specifically about packaging. That's kind of one of the ways that people can differentiate themselves. I've seen some amazing types of packaging where things are like, hey, they have reuse beyond just the cannabis stuff. There's a movement of, hey, let's reduce the amount of plastic in the oceans, which is a great idea. But for cannabis, I don't know how much it really works out because everything's wrapped 10 times in plastic. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the kind of cool developments that you guys are seeing in the cannabis industry specifically for packaging? There's lots of regulations around this. So let's talk about specifically what's the cool stuff out there that's not just the slide box with a clear tube that holds the vaporizer cartridge. What's cool stuff out there? Who should we be looking at for the kind of trend setting in this?
There's, I think a lot of the innovation right now is coming in the hardware. We're working with packaging companies that are innovating on the outer boxes, but there's not a lot of it because of the regulations. Gotcha. We're working with a company that has a patent on their own child patent locking sun-grown packaging up in the Bay Area, and it's all sustainable. So I think anything sustainable is very cutting edge and very important more and more each day.
Yeah, can I say something about that, Josh? Jim, it's a great question. And as you mentioned, cannabis has, two hands tied behind its back, when it comes to packaging. We've got so much, so many onerous, necessary in some cases, but in some cases overly protective. Sure. It's, you don't see this on alcohol. You don't see, double slides and ridiculous, overly complicated. I mean, there's packaging that I can't even open. Right. They're like Derek Zoolander banging on a computer. I can't open some of these things.
Consumer proof.
But, so like but we're used to this. We know cannabis is not treated, fairly, and that there's a large taboo, and people are still, people are still very cautious, and regulators and people in the new states, they don't want to screw up. And so they're insisting on, dual child, compliance and this and that. So it's difficult. And of course, what ends up happening is a lot of packaging, a new sort of concept will come along for pre-rolls. Let's call it slip out thing. And everyone shifts that. There is what I will add to this is that there's first mover advantage. And when we're working with clients and they're like, we really have no idea, our preference is always, let's find a new packaging. Awesome. Let's find a new packaging concept, a new design, a new form factor, not just for the sake of it, right? Like not, because that'll be the whole brand and that'll be the whole point of it. But if you can unite product, brand, and packaging form factor, of course, design is a part of that, into something unique, then you can run with that. You can have a year, 18 months where you're still being wowed. And you walk in and even the bud tender's like, oh, I haven't seen a pre-roll package like this, or, oh, what a cool vape battery. And so it's a tricky thing because you want to lead trends. You don't want to follow them, obviously. But then the issue with leading trends is then you got to keep leading. You can't lead, be the first on the shelf with a new packaging and then rest on your laurels for 2 years while everyone catches up to you, because what happens is everyone catches up to you and you lose market share. So we're going to be innovators, not only in product, not only in design and aesthetic, not only in packaging. We're going to continue to every year, every 18 months, come up with a new packaging concept. And we're always going to be known as, that brand that does X. And I think so that's something that the challenges of cannabis, whether they're financial, brand, product, design, packaging, they each present opportunities to like jump ahead. It's all leaps. It doesn't have to be like these little baby steps. Right.
It's like kind of step thing.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's something that we try to inculcate into our processes. Why do we have to design this vape package this way? It's just another column box. Cool, we can do that. We're great at that. It's safe. We already have the die lines. Our team has done 50 of them. We're going to have SKUs in a week. Or why don't we challenge ourselves to see what the new batteries are looking like and what the new packaging is. So that I think you sort of get that.
Gotcha, for sure. And do you guys for packaging stuff now, hey, we're not at least stateside. I know in a lot of Asian countries, they're able to go and meet in person and go to these conferences and expos and stuff. Are you guys traveling internationally to go see kind of what the new packaging designs are? Is this a lot of stuff you're doing research online? Tell me a little bit about that process in this kind of new state we're in.
We actually send Josh's son Nathaniel is our scout, and he's sick.
He's sick, so we send him to China quarterly.
Yep. We send him to Shenzhen, and he visits all the plants and reports back. No, listen. Right now, we don't. We're not. That's a step above our ken. I think that's something we will get into. I think that certainly there's enough out there now that we're not creating hardware. There's so many great hardware people out there. We worked for Puffco for a long time and have remained close with that crew. And so they do it best. We don't want to
No, I got you.
head on their turf.
For sure.
I think it's a balance between looking what's out there, seeing if it's right for our partners and clients, and then trying to find ways to make it splash.
For sure.
So no, we're not trolling China or other places to see the latest and greatest. And frankly, we're okay with that. We definitely
had to cancel a few trips to some trade shows this year, obviously, not packaging specific, but Hall of Flowers and MJ BizCon and a few others, industry specific. But yeah, I mean, we certainly stay on top of it with research and always searching, but because of the challenges and regulations, like Zach said, a lot of times it's recommending just a little bit more real estate or a different shape to something that we can kind of repurpose that feels innovative and different and thought leading without breaking the client's bank.
Makes sense. Yeah, for sure. So then let's talk about store design. I mean, this is like a real big critical factor, I think, to success. And you look at a store design for dispensary, it's not just, the design side. There's the customer experience and the flow, the inventory control, technology, design, aesthetics, all these different things go into designing a space. And, what are some of the first few things you guys did? You designed the dispensary, you said in Illinois, I believe, right? So kind of walking into that space for the first, I've only been to Chicago one time, but it's not only Illinois, but at any rate, going into a space, when you walk into a space, what are you looking for? What are the first few things you're looking at when you're trying to design a space that has such a new type of experience for it? There's not 1,000 million dispensaries to go look at, there's not one that's actually absolutely always crushing it, right? And each local business is going to need to adapt essentially to their local area. This is a local store marketing kind of thing. So tell me a little bit about that.
Correct.
Yeah. Josh, you want to go ahead? I definitely have some thoughts.
I mean, obviously it's a multifaceted project. The client is leading their thought on the way they want it to look, and then our job is to direct the consumers and make sure that the store is easily navigatable from the second you walk in. You want to know if you need a certain product category, you know where to go. So signage is critical, making sure it's readable, but also has some visual cues, and then designing it kind of reverse, just taking the environmental design and doing 3D renderings and placing products on the shelves, whether it's in Illustrator and on the computer, and building these virtual environments that we can work and play with and tweak with the client. Yeah, and then Zac,
Yeah,
can
what I would add, yeah, that's exactly right, Josh. And I think, what was really fascinating to us was having to work with not just the brand and the business itself, and it was a multi-store enterprise. So they had multiple retail locations in both Michigan and Illinois. And, we're working with architects, we're working with engineers, we're working with retail specialists, we're working with the bud tenders and general managers, so they can give their feedback on how they see things moving, waiting lines, impulse buys. I mean, the shelving, we ended up integrating with over 11 brands to understand what they wanted.
Yeah.
Something we sort of went wide and said, okay, well, what are the brands that are going to be on the shelf? What do they want? What do they have? Do they have LED? Do they have videos that we can put up LED screens? A lot of them did. They had little trailers and little videos. So that took over that. What about acrylics and basically wall stuff, posters and index cards and product? Are we allowed to put live product on a shelf, or does it have to be behind glass? And so I think, ultimately, whatever the brand is, again, to go back to this sacred but sullied word, it has to look and feel like the brand. So if the brand in this case was clean, was formal, it's a little corporate, nothing wrong with that. Wasn't too brash, wasn't too personal. It was a mainstream brand meant for a wide audience that anybody could walk into. A can of curious 65-year-old who maybe used to consume back in the day and is just getting back into it. Listen, we know that when states go legal, taboos drop like that. I mean, they drop real people who wouldn't have thought about weed for 20 years. All of a sudden, are like, I'm going to go check out that dispensary.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how do we serve that, that 32-year-old woman who knows exactly what she wants, and she's a pro dabber, or a 50-year-old guy who just likes good flower and is looking for that. So I think bearing in mind, always audience, but making sure that it fits with the brand, and that people are going to walk out of there. And, when we did the stores, we thought about not just entry. So when Illinois launched, there were lines. So what did we do? We came up with paper menus back when paper menus were a thing. So that, there were 500 people lined up outside this store in Collinsville. And the bud tenders knew it was coming. We had, over the weekend, created paper menus where people, like a sushi restaurant, could check off what they wanted.
Oh, cool.
Because otherwise they would have gone home empty. There was no way to manage that flow. Now, obviously that's come down, all the way through to what do the gift bags look like? What are the giveaways? What's the tissue paper that's being stuffed in the gift bags? What kind of merch are we having at the checkout desk?
So many touch points.
A lot of touch points, and it was so varied, and it was really so super challenging. Although we should mention that the Friend Street project, Josh, Jim, if you don't mind.
Talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. What is that?
So we were working for Ascend Wellness. And they are opening a store in downtown Boston on a street called Friend Street. It was going to be called the Friend Street Dispensary. And they had beautiful designs already done. Top-notch architecture firm, 4 floors, 7,000 square feet, really beautiful. Downtown Boston, a block from the Fleet Center, 2 blocks from Faneuil Hall, like primo tourist and just worker, downtown office worker territory. And on the 4th floor, they asked us to design basically what did we call it? An immersive cannabis experience.
An immersive experience based on the hemp and cannabis museums in Vegas and LA.
Gotcha.
Part promotional for their brands, part immersive experience. It was actually our first project with them. We had talked about outsourcing it, but I had experience doing environmental design for Coca-Cola. So our first project was me taking renderings of their floors and just adding the most grandiose ideas, anything we could dream of. We were photoshopping into a room and putting little scales.
Alice in Wonderland meets hemp.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool. Like blue sky innovation stuff, like whatever you could think
You could,
of.
like, walk through a terpene field that had giant strawberries and a bomb that
Like
was 30 feet
digital
high.
projections and like a virtual walkthrough of a grow where you would walking through a grow that was actually real, like 15 miles away.
Oh,
The
wow.
actual grow that was the flower there, and you would literally like interact
with a virtual
with
assistant
grower.
guiding you through the grow thing. It
Oh,
was
Super
wow.
cool. Super cool. So we got to do that. That was fun. I think, I'll end on this on the retail front, Jim. There's a lot that is left to the imagination right now. Cannabis is so early.
It's so
We
young.
say that it's in the top of the second inning, to use a baseball, metaphor. We know that the retail game has a lot to explore. I think as you see the industry move into the East Coast, places like New York, places like Massachusetts, where retailing is elevated to an art form. If you think of New York City, you think of, Soho, you think of Fifth Avenue, you think retail is a serious game, whether it's Prada or the Nike store or, Gucci or the Met Museum or the MoMA store. I mean, retail is an art form and can be elevated. Right now, I think most cannabis retail is how do we get the most people in and the most people out? And
That's it. Flow.
it's like our decor and our aesthetics and our lighting and our technology are all meant to serve business, and that's understandable. But when you have brands coming in and when you have businesses coming in, and you're starting to see this in California with is it Sherbinsky's and Cookies and Kaliba, brands that are opening up their own vision, that you're starting to see a little bit more, less focused on how do we get people in and out quickly, educate them, sell them, and out so that we can minimize time in store and maximize cart. And now it's, wait a second, we've got 10 stores. We're not worried about revenue so much. We want to make sure that our store is cementing our brand, that it's adding a layer.
An experience on its own. Go sit on a couch and just stare at the beautiful merchandise in the glass that you may or may not buy. It's just an enjoyable environment to be in. And one of the exciting things about working with dispensaries that are up and coming is because cannabis has been around for a handful of years and recreational in certain states and medical in others, it's still such a new industry. Like Zac and I say over and over again at the beginning of the second inning, we're able to use ideas from traditional retail that aren't being implemented in cannabis yet, like point of purchases hanging above a register that you never see in a dispensary. But then you go into a Carl's Jr. and you're so used to seeing it, you don't even realize it's there because you take it for granted. But if you really pay attention at a fast food restaurant, at the signage and the POP hanging and off of a register and on the floor and the decals. So we've been able to utilize that 20 years of traditional retail experience and really help our clients shine through guiding that consumer through the experience.
I couldn't say it any better. Yeah, there's so many people that have experience in other retail QSRs, and they have the great in-store POP and things of that nature. And it's like, man, we can really crush it and do a lot of the old tricks in this 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that will just crush in cannabis. So it's good that you guys see that. So let's talk about what are some of the recent developments in the cannabis industry that got you guys excited? Either new states coming online or new types of products being developed. What are some things that kind of got you guys excited aside from the general fun and happiness around the cannabis industry? What's some cool shit you guys are seeing out there right now?
We like cool shit.
Yeah.
I was almost going to say it extends past cannabis. We're really focused on just plant medicine in general. And we've been circling conversations with a few psychedelic clients. And that's really exciting to us, this revolution and of that whole arena. And companies really understanding the importance of marketing and branding within cannabis. For me, what about Zac?
Yeah, I mean, cannabis is great because of the level of innovation, and now that it's, now that there's pros and the revenue is starting to come online and businesses are starting to thrive. You're seeing exploration. So I mean, I would say in the last 18 months or 2 years, we've really liked the evolution of beverages and beverages and microdose ingestibles or microdose ideas. It starts to bring it back and into a more familiar world. The beverages are something that you're not lighting, you're not vaping. It's not an edible in that sense that the horror stories about eating a chocolate or a cookie and being, stoned for 10 hours. We all heard those stories. Exactly. So, I think that, beverages to us are like so fun. And there's so many ways you can go. You can go tonics, you can go carbonation, you can go energy shots. And then similarly, like the low dose stuff, I think those are so powerful because even experienced users, who might ingest or consume, 30, 40, 100 milligrams a day. I think microdose edibles have something to say for them, microdose
100%.
products. So I think that's it's exciting, but it's exciting because we know that those products are talking to a newer audience. And the whole point of that audience is new and to bring you in, to make you comfortable, to make it palatable, to make it safe, reliable, consistent. And so I think those are some of the things that have really inspired us. We're working on a couple of those right now for various clients. And, we like seeing the innovation out there. We don't necessarily have to be the first to launch something new. We'd love to do that with a few, and we have in a couple of cases, but we'd rather be something done well. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's some things we're tired of. I think of
what's an example?
Well, like effects-based cannabis products, I think they're not quite there, or they haven't been there. I think we're starting to see that with things like Tablet and a few others that are, isolating, CBN or CBG and Delta 9 and really dialing it in. But, every brand we get wants to do a sleep, an activate, an energy, a stimulate, a relief, a calm. And, whether or not they actually work for that, and we have questions about whether they do. Certainly every brand and every product is different, but what people are responding to is basically a trend that they've heard, which is that people want a product by what it's going to do to them. And I'm not so sure of that. I think some people do, but I think that's actually limited. And then you run into a higher risk if you say something is going to make you sleep and it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Then what? Right.
Exactly. Then I'm never buying your brand again.
They're never buying your product ever again. And they're going to go online and tell all their friends, oh yeah, I spent $60 on this sleep product and it kept me up for 2 days. And that's not the brand's fault necessarily, because everyone has a different endocannabinoid system. And I can smoke an indica and sometimes be up for an extra 3 hours. Other people will smoke keep an indica joint at their bed or a vape at their bed. And if they wake up in the middle of the night, they know they're going to take 2 hits and go right back to sleep.
Yeah.
So, and every day sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Every day we inch towards closer to federal legalization. Making claims like that are going to be one of the first things to go.
Oh, dude,
even if it is a marketing claim and you say no, as known to, you're not going to be able to say these things. And I think what Zach said, the audience, the fact that the moms and the grandmas are now talking to cannabis about me and coming to us as experts. And, a couple of years ago, I visited Portland and I went into Sarah and Electric Lettuce. And, this was 3 years ago. We were well into recreational. So it was 10 years of going into shops. But I walked into Sarah and it felt like walking into a Neiman Marcus. It felt like walking into a department store. And even the finest dispensaries in California still felt like walking into a weed shop. And that level of normality and acceptance and audience just felt so exciting to me. And the fact that now that trend is kind of sweeping the nation of you're going into stores that feel like retail stores that happen to sell cannabis versus just another weed shop is really exciting to me, the level of innovation.
100%. Have you guys been to Oklahoma at all and seen the kind of like how it's everywhere? There's more dispensaries than there are CVSs down there. I spent a couple weeks down there. Have you guys been to Oklahoma at all to see the kind of?
We haven't, but we're designing. We're launching a brand there. Hopefully before the end of the year, most likely Q1 21. So we're learning the business side. We're trying to, from a COVID standpoint, we're trying to be really careful. And if we don't need to travel as much as it might be hurting us here and there, we're trying, Josh has kids, I'm childless and loveless, but, trying to be responsible and not jumping flights if we don't need to.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And just adjusting, obviously being on site, pre-COVID, I was in California and Illinois and Massachusetts, basically all of last year. I was on the road as much as I was home in Boulder. And so we'll get back there. And I'm in New York originally, and I'm certainly very excited to see cannabis come to New York. It's going to take some time, but it's a big, sexy state. A lot of culture is made in New York, particularly in the city, but it's a giant state. There's lots of good areas for outdoor growing in New York State, as well as indoor. Obviously, it's where culture is made, whether it's music or fashion or finance or media or art, advertising. I mean, we cannot wait until New York City and the state, is legal. And we fantasize about what dispensaries and consumption lounges are going to look like, and what boutiques and what, music venues that have lounges. And I mean, it's just going to be so rich. And I think why that's so exciting is that, California is obviously a huge state, 5th largest economy in the world. You could focus your entire cannabis business in California. And if you do it right, you're going to be very successful, make tens of millions of dollars, if not more. But see, New York, but California has a 20-year plus history with cannabis and collectives and dispensaries. And they've all been grandfathered in and got shut down and been da 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 da. New York doesn't have that, so it's a blank slate. And I think that's really exciting to people like Josh and I, who really exist on like the unknown. That's where we thrive. We're not production artists. We don't like to do the same thing over and over again. We do it when we have to. When a client, we need another vape box, sure. But for us, it's like, wait a second, we're being flown in to go look at a 7,000 square foot space in Soho to design a dispensary or to launch a brand boutique. Like, we can't wait for that.
That's gonna be an amazing phone call.
That's sort of what we're eyeing.
Makes sense. So then let's talk about kind of, what are some of the things that you wish you would have known about the cannabis industry that, when you first started, that would have potentially saved you some heartache, right? It's not always sunshine and rainbows in the cannabis industry. There's problems, there's issues, there's ways to fix things, and then you try to fix them and you screw them up even more, So what are some of the things that maybe for the new people watching this or consuming this or learning about this industry, what should they know before they get started in the industry or before they engage a creative agency like yourselves? What should they, what are those early things that they should be thinking about, or things that, hey, if you knew this, it would have taken some pain away from you guys starting your business in the cannabis industry?
It's a really good question. I have an answer, Zach, unless you want to go.
Go ahead. I'll think about mine. I've got a bullshit something here. It's a great question.
One thing I tell people, I was that guy for a while. I want to get into cannabis. I want to get in. My friends who were in cannabis would chuckle, and I didn't quite understand why they would chuckle. And then I got in it doing what I already did well, which was design, and it felt right. And then I began to understand why people chuckle when you say, "Oh, I want to get into cannabis. It feels like a green rush." And I had one guy tell me he wanted to get into cannabis, and we got to talking, and he said he wanted to open up an extraction lab and start making concentrates. I said, "Oh, do you have a science background?" And he was like, "Oh, God, no. I'm a real estate zoning expert." I said, "You're a real estate zoning expert? Just if you're already doing that, just go find some cannabis clients. That's a gold mine." So my advice is to, if you really want to get into cannabis, don't necessarily try to do something that's not what you normally do just to get into cannabis, but find a way of doing what you do well within the cannabis space. There's no need, if you're a real estate zoning expert, to go start a lab. Start a real estate zoning consulting company, because that is a huge business. So I think do what you already do well, do what you do passionate about. Don't try to get into it just for the sake of getting into it. Cannabis is a sacred plant that's doing lots of well around the world, and you should trust that.
Yeah.
I would add to that, certainly I have no problem if somebody sees an economic opportunity and wants to just jump in for that. It certainly is. I mean, there's going to be tens of billions of dollars over the next decade in this industry, not just here, but around the world. We're in the beginning stages of a generational revolution, and eventually cannabis will be a $100 billion enterprise. So come on in. The water's great. We obviously the strong will survive. I mean, certainly, get ready to improvise. Be committed, because if you don't really love the plan or care about it, the challenges are going to be so severe and so new that if you're not ready to improvise, wear many hats, deal with lots of different people, figure things out, and really challenge yourself and be challenged just again and again and again, then you're going to waste your time. And it's going to not be fun, and you might as well just stick with what you're doing. That being said, we welcome everyone. Like I associate cannabis with inclusion and with basically hugging everybody, and in its best form. And I've certainly met people in this industry I don't want to hug and I don't want to hang out with. And I think ultimately you got to find your people, and the corporate finance guys can go work with the corporate finance guys, and the homie OG teams can go work with the homie OG teams and everything in between. So, you know, I think ultimately there's enough room. And for us, it's not about getting a piece of the pie. It's growing the pie.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game, you know. Like just when someone jumps in doesn't mean you're taking food out of your mouth, bro. This industry is popping off. It's getting huge by the day, you know, parabolic growth.
Other people's success only benefits ours.
Yeah,
you know?
That's good. So we've been talking for like an hour here. What else have we not covered that you'd like to talk about in the last, you know, few minutes here? What are anything top of mind? Could be design related, you know, cannabis related. What's some stuff we should talk about at the end here?
Ooh, that's another good question. Coming up with a couple zingers at the end.
Got to keep you guys on your toes, man.
You promised us softballs, Jim. This is
bro. I gave you tons of softballs at the beginning.
I'm out of this Zoom. I'm gonna go early to my tennis lesson. You know, gosh, Josh, anything come to mind?
Or maybe think you're looking forward to, like, what's some stuff you're looking forward to potentially in the industry? Like, I can't wait till we get to this day in the industry, or this is, you know, we talked about the Soho getting invited down. Like, that's going to be a monumental thing. But like, what are some of the milestones you guys are sitting in your head? Like, what's the future for Trust Nomad? You know, anything that we haven't covered here.
See, that we can definitely speak to. That gets us going. The conversations that Zac and I have late night about the future of what we're doing is really exciting. And, you know, with that, I'll kind of let him share the snippets of the vision that we're putting together.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, Jim, as I just mentioned, you know, we all wear many hats in cannabis, you know, and because it's such a wide open space, you know, what in the marketing and branding worlds they call blue space or green space, it's untouched. We've been able to center ourselves not only as with our network of clients and partners and people we work with or work for, but, you know, we've met so many people that are getting into their own things. For instance, a group that we met in Michigan that is based in Colorado, but they're launching a grow in Michigan, and they have retail space available in Boulder, Colorado, and they want to do a consumption lounge, and we have a concept for a consumption lounge. And so we integrate with them on that here, and then we have a client who needs access to Michigan, right? So all of a sudden there's these like integrations that just sort of happen organically, and they take time. Like you meet somebody, maybe you follow up with an email or LinkedIn or something, and then they pop into your head because you have a need. I have a client that needs to get into Michigan, even though it's not our job. I'm going to hit my network. Who do I know? Oh, that guy. And all of a sudden that umbrella's out, and it just starts to steamroll. And so we are definitely evolving beyond just brand agency. There's just way too much opportunity. Frankly, there's way too much money to be made. You know? And for us, like, you know, like I said, Josh and I are, you know, in our 40s. We like nice lifestyles. We're not balling out or drinking Cristal or anything, but we want to do well. We're here to do well. Josh has a family. I hope to one day. So, you know, money is important to us. It's certainly a motivating factor. We like chasing clients. We like doing great work. We like growing clients. But there's so much opportunity, creative, financial, personal, professional, to, you know, when you find yourself, I think we've faced this where it's like, wait, we don't do this. Should we be doing this? And it's like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
We've got the network, we've got the trust, we've got the clients or the cash to do other projects. So I think we're thinking about how does Nomad evolve? We're always going to want to do design. We're always going to want to build brands and develop cultures and work with entrepreneurs and founders and passionate people. Always. That'll never go away.
Yeah.
But I think listening to the silent trees about what's actually going on out there and where we can plug into a node here, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a whole new world, a whole new state open to us.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of how do we keep, there's not really a name for what we're becoming. It would sort of, the closest thing would be design build in the architecture and engineering world, where someone designs it and then actually builds it out. But I even think that what that looks like, stay tuned. We'll tell you. We'd love to come back in a year and tell you about how we've evolved, and maybe we've got that. You know, we're partners in a cultivation, or we've got a brand that we'd like to launch, or a consumption lounge idea. So we're just setting ourselves up and trying to do the best job we can, build great relationships, manage those relationships, not stay focused on any end goal, and just enjoy the ride as much as possible.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to add in there, Josh?
Yeah, I just, it's an exciting time for Nomad. Like Zach said, the fact that we are growing beyond what we do in the design world and learning, I've never been very business minded. I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. So teaming up with Zach and having him drive that business while he also helps with the vision on the creative. So it's just been a real exciting time. And the fact that we're helping build brands, bring them to market, it's an exciting time. So
I know what I'll say, Jim. Another piece of advice: find a great partner. As Josh just attested, when you find people who complement you, doing this alone is just, it's impossible. And so I think you need a great team of people around you. Having an art department and a creative department of the quality that Josh has built and overseen and manages empowers me not only to be creative with them, but to basically be basically fueled and my energy in going after new business and seeking out new opportunities and ways to unleash this great creative team we have, just like accelerate. So I think getting the right partners, getting complementary, not trying to do it all yourself. These are essential things. Cannabis is a tough business. It is, no pun intended, weeds a lot of people out, and it will continue to do so because people see new industry and they see the news stories and they just see dollar signs and they seem, oh, those people must be, making money hand over fist. They don't see the double taxation. They don't see the onerous regulations. They don't see the trouble collecting cash. They don't see the, hedge funders coming in with tens of millions of dollars, but needing to, waste 8 of it or 40 of it, figuring out, making a bunch of mistakes. So, you better have the right people on your bus, and like you said, buy the ticket, take the ride.
That's it. Well, Josh, Zach, thank you very much for your time today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you guys. Where can we find you on the internet? What's the website?
Thank you, Jim. It's trustnomad.co.
Right.
And from there, you'll see our Instagram and portfolio and blog and all that good stuff. You can find us right there.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to get those links in the video description below or on the screen here. Again, thank you guys for your time. I've really, really enjoyed our chat, and I'd like to have you guys on in another 12 months to see where you guys are at.
Anytime.
Thank you. Congratulations on your growth and all that you're doing. And thank you for including us.
You're very welcome. Cool, guys. Well, thank you very much.
Peace, Jim.